Hare Krishna Gauranga. We're going to look now at Bhagavad-Gita chapter 9. So we've now entered into the most confidential knowledge. They say that the Bhagavad-Gita is split into the, front 6, back 6, protecting the middle 6 chapters, So this is the most confidential knowledge, this chapter 9, most special instructions from the Lord. And we're going to start with 9:10. There is quite a few of the 30 key verses in that chapter. So this is kind of where they're all grouped together again. And then it'll split off into the last little couple of bits. So we have 15 left. So bear with me. Let's hope we can try to keep opening them up a little bit. My intention was just merely to introduce them and then give some 10-15 minutes just to highlight some of the key points. So thank you for bearing with me, thank you for listening to the classes, and please continue to support, that I can be inspired to try and do more, and obviously hopefully that you guys can be inspired as well by hearing these topics from the Supreme Person of Godhead. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Mayadhyakshena prakritihi suyati sacharacharam hetunanena kunteya jagad viparivartate. This material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, producing all moving and non-moving beings. Under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapandantikam Namom Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Sunyavari Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Garim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Nama Shreshtam Manamapi Sachiputra Atra Surupam Rupam Teshagrajamurupurimatharim Goshtavatim Radha Kundam Girivar Mahoratika Madhavasam Praptoyasha Pratita Kripaya Shri Gurum Tamnatoshmi Namam Vishnupataya Krishna Prastaya Putale Srimati Janananda Goswami. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. It is clearly stated here that the Supreme Lord, although aloof from all the activities of the material world, remains the Supreme Director. So we continue to speak on this point that Krishna, the original Supreme Person of Godhead, is a beautiful blue cowherd boy in a threefold bending form, playing his flute in the groves of Vrindavan. He's going around with thousands and thousands of cows, taking them from the pastures in Govardhan Hill over to another part of the forest, whether it's Talavan or Mahavan or Kamyavan, so on and so forth. And he's stopping to take his lunch with his friends, and then he's enchanting the hearts of all the gopis, the most pure and devoted servants of the Lord. And then he comes home to his parents, Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda, and they feed him, change his clothes, and then he goes back out again for more pastimes. And this is going on eternally like this. This is our eternal nature, is to be there in the supreme spiritual world, where there is no suffering, no darkness, there is no old age, disease or death, any of these things. It's all completely pure devotional service with the Lord. So despite that he's there in the spiritual world, his material nature is all still going on nicely. This is true potency, actually. This is the example of supreme. That you're able to manifest your energies without any thought. Because this is what we would think God can be like. This is really what would be impressive, isn't it? That it's not that God, again, it's not that God's constantly having a look and saying, okay, in 2 minutes I have to look out for this causal devastation. I have to make sure it works on time. And then, at 10 o'clock, my diary's filled with that entry that I've got to, I've got to appear in another universe. So I'm really busy today, Or he's not thinking, oh my God, I'm sitting here juggling these planetary systems. I'm keeping them afloat, using gravity. No, they're all being maintained by his Vishnu expansions. And then the demigods are running the show in terms of all the elements and so on and so forth, as we heard in the previous verses. And Krishna is just simply, enjoying with his devotees. That's Krishna, because that's God. God's the only enjoyer. We're the enjoyed, And of course, that for us is actually is amazing. It's an indescribable feeling, actually. The Supreme Lord is the supreme will and the background of this material manifestation, but the management is being conducted by material nature. Krishna also states in Bhagavad-Gita that of all the living entities in different forms and species, I am the Father. The father gives seed to the womb of the mother for the child, and similarly the Supreme Lord by his mere glance injects all the living entities into the womb of material nature, and they come out in their different forms and species according to their last desires and activities. So here's this point about karma. We've already covered a bit of knowledge on karma throughout the early past chapters of the Bhagavad-Gita. 2 chapters actually are on karma yoga. So that's how much detail the Lord felt was needed for that particular subject matter. So to that degree that one surrenders, the Lord reciprocates accordingly. We keep hearing that sloka. And also it says that whatever one thinks about the time of death, that state you will attain without fail. So we are creating the next body in this lifetime. So people ask sometimes, what about suffering, and what about, say, for example, deformed bodies, and so many different things. And I heard this I heard that question so wonderfully and expertly answered by Tribhuvannath Prabhu. And someone asked him, what about deformed and suffering bodies and so many different things? And he says, actually, that's mercy. And you must think, oh my God, what kind of, that's ghastly mercy. But no, the material nature is working according to set rules and regulations. It's not that Krishna is dishing out these horrible punishments. Although in one sense, both sides are there. Radhanath Swami speaks about this. He says, in I don't know, an old class from like the 90s or something, and he says that, the Christian God is this God of wrath, vengefulness and punishment for the sinners. And also, Allah is also the same in that sense to the sinners, or to the non-believers, or to the followers of other, religions. He's this, God of complete smashing potency. Just, you'll be put into hellish planetary systems for eternity for not being a believer of Islam, And Krishna's energy is also, in some ways, represents that. The hellish planetary systems are there. We hear about them in the fifth canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. They're there. The last chapter is the descriptions of the hellish planetary systems. We hear about that. That is real. It's a real thing. Yamaraj is a real demigod in charge of. He's the superintendent of death. Just like in Egyptology, Greek mythology, you have Hades, the god of the underworld. I think it's Set is the god of the underworld in Egypt, in the Egyptology, So there's different understandings of that in these like Aztecs and different things. There's also gods of death and so on and so forth, gods of life, gods of the sun, gods of the moon. You know, that's there in all the different cultures because it stems from the Vedic. So that is a real thing. So there is that side of God. For the sinful, the material energy is very powerful and very strong and will act in the appropriate way if need be. But for the devotees, wow, Krishna is the most wonderful, loving Father, caring and protecting. Mother Yashoda is the perfect example. She is able to love Krishna, care for Krishna, feed him, and she thinks that nothing can go past without her looking after him. He won't survive a second without her help. That's the Supreme Person of Godhead to the devotees. You know, that wonderful Lord who takes the prasadam and, you know, that is offered to him, you know, and he puts it in his mouth and he gives it back and he enjoys and he does water fights and they do wrestling. That's the Krishna for the devotees. That's the most beautiful, wonderful, Supreme Personality of Godhead, soft and caring, you know. And that Supreme Personality of Godhead who, as I said in another class, that he does see everyone equally, but naturally favours the devotees who surrender themselves to him fully, with such sometimes almost difficult austerity, especially in this material world. That's Krishna. So both sides are there. You know, the hard side of, you know, God's energies working according to what we have dished out for our own selves. You know, we've set the plan ahead so we can pave the path, you know, ourselves in this lifetime, what will happen to us in the next birth. All these living entities, although born under the glance of the Supreme Lord, take their different bodies according to their past deeds and desires. So the Lord is not directly attached to this material creation. He simply glances over material nature. Material nature is thus activated and everything is created immediately. There's no 7 days, there's no resting, you know, like that. That's a certain understanding, yes. But the higher understanding and the original and what you say most clear understanding is this. You know, here it's saying everything is boom, it's activated, it's there. Nothing was put through evolution, nothing was upgraded or expanded or anything like that. It's just put in. The species, the 8,400,000 species of life, they're dropped in, so to speak, and then it all goes from there, you know. Because he glances over material nature, there is undoubtedly activity on the part of the Supreme Lord. But he has nothing to do with the manifestation of the material world directly. This example is given in the Smriti Shastras. When there is a fragrant flower before someone, the fragrance is touched by the smelling power of the person, yet the smelling and the flower are detached from one another. So this is like the interaction of the two potencies, basically. There is a similar connection between the material world and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Actually, he has nothing to do with this material world, but he creates by his glance and ordains. In summary, material nature without the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot do anything, yet the Supreme Personality is detached from all material activities. So he says that he is in everything, you know, but everything is not in him. So we've disconnected ourselves from the spiritual nature in that sense. And obviously his energy and appearances and everything, but he also takes his free will to remain aloof in that sense, until such time as we obviously then become devotees and reach out to him, in which case again he then appears fully in our presence, or can do to that degree that we can accept Krishna consciousness. This verse is very technical in that sense, and there's many other shlokas that go so in depth into the scientific nature of Krishna consciousness. This is one thing to stress again and again and again, and Prabhupada always put it from that point of view, that Krishna consciousness is a science. It's not spirituality, it's not meditation, it's not religiosity, it's not a cult, It's not just cultural. It's scientific, practical, exploration into who God is, where God is, when God came, why God came, why God, why us, why energies, what energies, the levels higher and lower of energies of the material world, the spiritual world, the unit, everything. It's all, that's science. That's not religion. That's not, it's not just a spiritual thing. It's scientific. We practically speaking put this in, because the things that we do as devotees is practical. Japa, our main service to Guru and to this Sankirtan Yagya, the chanting the holy name, is practical. The cleansing of the heart, the feeling of clarity, the feeling of purity, the feeling of conviction that comes from that activity. And sometimes even the struggle to control the mind, that's practical. Every single day we practically reapply our minds and hearts to chanting the holy name. When you're absorbed in Sankirtan, Yugadharma Harinam, chanting, playing with Mridanga, Karatal, harmonium, chanting from your heart, that's practical. When you're engaging in feeding, looking after your kids, getting them up in the morning, singing to them Vaishnav songs, again, practical service, practical application of this science. There isn't a day goes by for a devotee when he's not engaged with Krishna. That's what we're looking to achieve. That is Krishna consciousness. So although Krishna may sometimes step back, he may come closer, as is what he feels is necessary for the devotee's advancement, and certainly, of course, to the materialists as well. He may give them wonderful abilities, and he may withdraw according to the material energies appropriate, give or take according to the karma of that person. So that's also Krishna's involvement or lack of involvement. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi, Hari Bol.